If you were here last night, you know that we are having some a little more difficult conversations in here than maybe we typically do in a typical Bible class. But we figured it's a good opportunity once we send the kids off to learn about some things that we should learn about too, but it gives us an opportunity to talk about some other things. So we're talking about modern challenges to the family. And last night we talked about the modern couple and some of the things that couples in our world today are facing. Kip Green is with us from the North Jefferson congregation. He's also a licensed counselor and works with me at Child Haven. And so a lot of what we're talking about is from a clinical perspective with a biblical foundation. Joe, my PowerPoint's not on, my man. You're leaving me blind. And tonight we're going to talk about addiction, and we're going to talk about it from probably a little different perspective than you've heard before. You say, well, addiction is not a modern problem. It's been around for a long time. The Bible has a lot to say about drunkenness, and there are some examples very early on, even in the book of Genesis, of some problems in that regard. But if you think about, there's no point in history have we had so much ease of access to various substances, drugs, but not only that, but just material, just things, right? And so you've got pornography addictions and technology addictions and social media addictions, and there's just so much that we can easily be consumed with. But most of the time when we, at least from my perspective, when we talk about or we get information about addiction, it's about addictive substances.
That's right.
Right?
That's what folks think.
So here's what alcohol does. Here's what marijuana does. Here's right. Why it's addictive. What was it? Sugar was what? 8 times more addictive than cocaine?
8 times more addictive than cocaine, and nobody wants to talk about it. I like sugar in my coffee, Gary.
I know. I may have Mountain Dew in this cup right here. High fructose corn syrup. I may be addicted. Or when we hear about addiction, we hear about the individual addict themselves.
That's right.
Right? So there's a lot of talk about what's happening in the brain and what's happening in their bodies. Physiological makeup in response Absolutely. To those chemicals.
That goes back to that medical model we talk about, right?
I didn't know you were going to bring that up.
Oh, okay. I won't.
That's a rabbit hole.
I know. We won't chase that one. Yeah. Forget I said it.
Everything is labeled as a disease because, well, then you can prescribe meds.
Then you can make money.
To treat it with. Yeah. And addiction is talked about that way too. But we're going to talk about addiction from a relational perspective. Yes, we're going to talk about the addict, but we're going to talk about the relationships that the addict has. And since we're talking about the family, the modern family, we're going to focus on the familial relationships that the addict has and the roles that are played in the family that allow addiction to be sustained.
That's correct. Not just begun, but sustained.
So I don't want you to misunderstand. Like, we're not saying that people are not responsible for their own choices.
Right.
But people make those choices within a context.
Make them possible.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be calling names either.
No.
We're not going to be labeling you. We're going to be explaining categories.
And because that's what we're talking about, these are kind of generic. And there's a lot of diversity in family dynamics. And so this is just sort of, this is just a a general way of kind of beginning the discussion.
I think that's a great way to put it.
So let's go ahead and get started. Here's what, you're going to love my slides. These are
But I just said we're not going to label anybody.
hand-drawn. Well, the word label is up there.
It is up there.
But we're not labeling anybody. We're labeling a collection of emotions, feelings, and behaviors.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
Okay? So this is what each slide is going to look like. So I want you to just, because there's a lot of information, so I want you to go ahead and kind of get a feel for it. In the middle, in that circle, there will be some feelings, some inside feelings.
The dreaded counselor word.
So what might be going on inside this person, whether we're talking about the addict or whether we're talking about some other role that is being played? What are they expressing in terms of feelings? And they're outside the circle because you can observe them.
That's right.
You can see them. They're expressed. And then there are observed behaviors. So what do they do? What are the actions that occur?
Especially patterns.
Patterns, yeah. And then down at the bottom right corner, bottom left corner, let's start there, is the price that's paid for filling this role, for expressing these feelings and these behaviors. It's pretty easy to think about the price that the addict pays, right? The consequences of these behaviors. On the right bottom corner of each slide is a payoff, right? Because we don't do things that don't have some payoff for us.
I got to get something in return.
Even those things that may be bad for us and may be negative, like there's something we're getting out of it for doing it. And so we'll have a payoff for the individual, but we'll also, because we're not talking about individuals, we're talking about relationships, we'll note a payoff for the family. A payoff for the family. And you'll see what I mean as we go through this. So let's start with the dependent. Let's start with the addict in relational terms. So let's just in your mind's eye, because we all can picture this because it's prevalent in movies. This is kind of a scenario we can picture. Think about an alcoholic father, right? And a spouse and children, right? And so think about that caricature in your mind. Think about a movie it's represented in. Maybe it's a little more personal than that. Maybe you've had some personal experience with it. But think about the alcoholic. Think about the dependent. And think about the emotions that can be expressed. And I know it can be different, whether they're actually intoxicated at the moment or not. But anger, blaming, right? Excuses for their behaviors. They can be somewhat charming and manipulative. Very rigid, though. What would rigid mean?
Hard and fast rules on certain parts of their life, certain part of their day, that they cannot be flexible on. That might be painful to say, right?
Yeah. And then perfectionist, you don't often think about a dependent
right
having perfectionist behaviors.
Inability to give and adjust.
Fits with the rigid piece, huh?
It does.
But in the middle, right, in that circle, what's going on in here is often things like fear, guilt, and shame. Now, where that comes from, see, and this is what's not talked about a lot. If you were to take any given room full of addicts, whether it's a prison, whether it's a rehab, whether it is your local AA meeting or NA meeting, almost 90% of them can identify some trauma
or failure.
Some trauma or personal failure that is really hitting deep in here.
And they got it locked away.
And so what they're doing is medicating. Medicating that. What I learned very quickly about addiction treatment is that it's trauma treatment. If you can get down to the root of it. So in Proverbs 31, there's this the words of King Lemuel. It's an oracle that his mother taught him. But she says, it's not for kings to drink wine or for rulers to take strong drink, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to the one who is perishing, and wine to those in bitter distress. Let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. Now, she's not prescribing that you give the strong drink as a treatment for.
Right.
What she's observing is that you want to be clear-headed and sober-minded as a leader. But what often happens is that people who are hurting, right?
That's right.
Are trying to forget their pain.
They want to soften it.
And they are medicating themselves. And that's at the root of dependency. Even more so than the fact that the chemicals, that the things, the substances themselves will produce a chemical dependence.
That's right.
So what's going on in here? Fear, guilt, shame. A history of abuse, neglect, traumatic experiences that they'd rather forget 90% of the time. There's something there. And so the payoff is relief from pain. Relief from pain. The payoff for the family, however, well, there's not really a positive
No, sir.
for the rest of the family.
No, sir.
For the addict themselves to be filling this role. And the price is addiction. The addiction itself. In 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about not being brought under the power
That's right.
of any. And so that's the price that this person is paying, is that they've given away their power. They're being controlled by something else.
We tend to see the dependent. We see that we can look at a brother or sister in Christ, and we can see that they're getting relief. They're wanting temporary relief. It's seen as a weakness. Sometimes people look at it as a weakness in character. We can catch that. And we can even see that the price is what addiction does to the family. The part that we want to talk about tonight is in the center. Do you, as the church, does Kip see that person as having a fear they cannot control that they have succumbed to, a guilt that is on their mind, and a shame that will not allow them to open? That's what the church needs to see. That's why Gary has this one diagram for us to see that. That's what we hope you see tonight as we work through some of these categories.
So what that means is that instead of looking at this person as an addict,
right?
Like the addiction is a poor coping skill.
Exactly.
That has spiraled into a problem of its own.
The coping becomes the monster.
There's something else to be dealt with. Now, so that's why this discussion about the relationships of the addict is so helpful. Because the only way you can help is via a relationship.
That's it.
But you can't control what somebody else does. You can only control how you relate to them. So, in a dysfunctional family, let's think about the primary person that may relate to this person. And that would be, usually there's somebody who is an enabler.
Yeah, somebody allowing it to happen, somebody helping it to happen.
Now, this is a hard discussion.
It is. This is going to cut.
Because the primary enabler is trying to help.
In their own way.
And so the feelings, right, on the right side. Super worker. Actually, there's not a whole lot of expressed feelings. These are all behaviors.
These are all observed.
Huh. Okay.
Maybe the audience can give us some feelings. Maybe they can relate here once we get through these these 6.
The primary enabler is usually a super worker. And why would they need to be a super worker? The alcoholic is not consistent with working and providing, right? Physical illness. Now, why would the enabler be prone to physical illness? She's carrying the weight of the relationship, has a bulk of stress. Fragility is usually there. That goes along with that physical illness, weakened immune system. They exhibit rescuing behaviors. So this is the person that every time the addict is put in jail for driving intoxicated,
right,
they go and bail him out. Helpful, rescuing. Or every time they're in debt, they pay the bill. And that enables because, well, that allows them to continue doing what they've been doing.
Exactly.
They're a protector, right? That's the way they view what they're doing. They're just protecting.
I'm just being a good parent.
And so there's an over-responsibility. An over-responsibility. But after a while, you build up some resentment and anger.
That's the key right there. Because you're having to do that.
But you don't express it.
No, I can't tell you. You think I won't? You think I don't love you anymore if I tell you I'm angry?
And the payoff for doing that, right, because there's some reason why it continues to happen, is for the individual some importance.
Yeah, it gives them value.
I'm needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But what do you need me for?
Exactly.
Sustaining your addiction.
Yep. Not real character building, not real relationship defining, but sustaining of the negative part of your life. That's where it cuts, isn't it? That's where it cuts. I wonder what emotions they would tell us that they're feeling now. What emotions are there? We know they're feeling anger. We've just said that. But those observable behaviors, what emotions are they feeling? You guys tell me. Uncertainty? Remorse for being over responsible? Okay, all right. They're not allowing the addict to hit rock bottom, and we know that's where they have to hit. And they're stopping that. They're preventing that. Okay. Remorse.
Yeah, I mean, where was the prodigal son when he had that moment of realization, I need to return to the Father? He's in the pig pen.
Yeah, he's in the mire of the pig pen.
Well, what if somebody sustained him just enough to keep him out of the pig pen? Does he ever come to that realization?
He never has that epiphany. I agree.
Maybe not. But what is the payoff for the family? Well, somebody's got to carry the family, right? Somebody's got to keep things going. Somebody's got to sustain things. And so the family depends upon the enabler. But the price that's paid is, you can barely read it because
that's what I was looking at.
My scribbling. Low self-worth and illness.
Illness, yeah. because they're overworked. They're carrying too much of the burden. So with that remorse, I think it's very important that we see that negative side. That is what pushes them down physically, that physiological response. We don't think about that, but our feelings and our emotions can drive us to a negative place physically.
But think about the pattern, right? So you've got the addict who's in this spiral of coming back to this substance or this behavior in order to deal with whatever they're not dealing with,
whatever they're trying to hide from.
With. And so then the enabler is following the same pattern in relation to the addict, though.
That's right.
The same pattern. And so, and once they're in that cycle, well, it's just like the addict who can't stop. You can't stop because you're the only one carrying the relationship.
Yes. It may be a different color, but it's the same shape. The pattern is the same shape.
So the enabler ends up being dependent on the dependent, and the dependent is dependent on the roles don't get played unless there are two of them playing together. Yes. That's why the phrase codependent came into existence.
What about another emotion to go in there? What about self-denial?
Sure. Denying what they see, denying what they know, denying the negative behavior they're observing.
Or even denying what is needed for their like I got to shove my own emotions down, like that anger.
I got to keep it hidden.
I got to keep this together, and I got to carry this family.
That's a good point. Propping that addict up.
Actually, weakness. Because they're too weak to let happen what needs to happen.
And the hush falls across the crowd. It is very difficult to stand, especially when we're talking about a family member, and watch them fall. It's very difficult when we know it has to happen. And that leads us to this dysfunctional discussion tonight.
It's just like the father in the parable of the prodigal son. He never let him go.
He had to give him his money, and he had to let him go.
And the picture is almost like he sits on the porch drinking his coffee every day, looking and hoping his son comes back. But and you don't know which one it's going to be, because they just as likely could succumb to the addiction, and you get the phone call of an overdose, as you get the phone call of, I messed up, I need to
come home
back. But whose decision does that end up having to be anyway? Theirs.
It has to be the addict.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Okay,
Should we
we're off
move
and
on?
running. We're off and running.
Okay. All right. So, I didn't hand draw this one, because I know you're looking at it, you're like, well, why couldn't you draw the others? So we typically think about relationships, we immediately think about the dyad, right? We think about the two.
That's right.
But what happens, especially as a dyad relationship gets more and more stressed.
Yes, stretched.
Stretched and stressed. You have to triangulate somebody else into it in order to spread that stress out, right?
That's
For
right.
it to be sustainable.
And the dyad brings in everything we talked about last night. If the pair become unstable, if the pair cannot maintain their foundation, think about what happens here. Think about how quickly and easily that becomes stressed, and even to the point of dividing. So here we go with this dyad, and that's a big $15 word, isn't it? I know. Okay, I'm with you.
But, triangles. Now we're talking triangles.
We got
everybody knows what a triangle is.
Everybody knows what that is. We got that.
But what's really sad about this is that, well, who gets triangled in first?
Now we're getting personal.
Are the children. because we're talking about a family.
That's exactly what happens.
So we might end up with a child, and again, we're assuming this, to simplify it, we're assuming, okay, look at like the alcoholic father, the mother, and the children, but these roles can be in different arrangements.
Anywhere across the triangle.
But we're just simplifying it, right? So we got one child that in this family who fills the role of a hero.
He's our favorite.
Well, they're working for approval,
right?
And they have to work for approval because everybody's so caught up in their own drama that they're not just going to get it. The hero has to be non-feeling because there's too much emotion already going on. Everybody else has all that going on. They usually pursue helping professions. Because that's kind of the personality that develops, because that's what they've done in their family.
That's where they get praise.
That's where they feel a sense of success, reward. They are oriented towards success. And it can be, okay, trying to rise out of this.
Yes, trying to ascend out of this muck.
And usually this kid is identified by others outside as a good kid.
A good kid. Follows the rules.
But inside they feel guilty and inadequate. Why would they feel inadequate? Because they're having to work for the approval.
Mm-hmm.
A father's love is supposed to be unconditional.
Mm-hmm. Given openly. So why do we have to... What do we do to work for it? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I know everybody knows somebody in this situation, maybe in you. What do you have to do to get that approval? You're working for that approval. What do you have to do to get that? Give me some practical, real examples. Overcompensate. How do you overcompensate? I think it's exactly right, but how do you do that? Or have to do more. So at home, in this situation, what's the more that you guys would do to work for approval? Let's give you an example. I would have to, let's say, bust wood. I'd have to bust an extra rick of wood, and to get that praise, I would overcompensate. I would overwork. I would overdo it to get that approval, to get that praise. Now, what's some other examples?
Always trying to be a perfection.
Okay. Okay, yeah, it's not a possibility, right? And everything has to be perfect. There we go. All right.
I got to bring home A pluses.
A plus,
got
yeah.
to.
A minus ain't good enough. 92, 93 is not good enough. It's got to be a 99 or 100.
And then, so the payoff, right? The need for this role in this family is, well, this person gets individually, they get attention, and it's positive, right? So they're getting the attention that all kids crave and deserve. But for the family to allow this to go on, see, what we're talking about is functional dysfunction.
That's right. Making it work in a bad way.
Right? So you got that dysfunctional relationship here, and you got a kid involved, and there has to be other roles triangulated in so that this dysfunction is at least somewhat functional.
Right.
So the payoff for the family is self-worth. What rests on this kid's shoulders is the value of the entire family.
We've always heard they carry the weight. Isn't that a phrase that we understand? This is yes. Okay, good. The price is what hurts, right?
Yeah.
The price is where this hurts.
That compulsive drive. Now, in all of these, there's these words like dependent and compulsive, and so, well, that'll come around. That'll come back up in a minute. Right? So you got a kid, the hero. Should we say something else about the hero, or is that pretty good?
Let's wait.
Okay.
They know the punchline's coming. They're just waiting for us to hit them with it.
The lost child. There's usually a lost child. At the heart of the lost child is loneliness. Because, well, this kid is really just sort of there.
Yes. This is the kid that will melt into the wall, right? Walks by the door, becomes the door. We've all seen those kids. Maybe those kids from time to time. That's what we're talking about here.
Withdrawn, shy, low achievers, just the
Yes.
opposite of the hero. They like pets, and those things that you can sort of get some attention from alone without people.
Yeah, some return.
Yeah. This child is most prone to be sexually promiscuous.
Why? Why would this child be more sexually active? Looking for love in all the wrong places. I think I heard a song about that.
That's exactly the way our world tells you to address loneliness, right? I mean, that's the way relationships are defined in our world. But also things like asthma and bedwetting and things like that. Because, well, did you know that your physiology is affected by the quality of your relationships? Like, that's documented science. Your immune system, right? The relationships, the quality of your relationships impact that. And so there are physical symptoms that this child manifests from this loneliness. The payoff for the family, for the individual, is escape, right? So look, I'm kind of outside of this drama, right? They can yell at each other, or
I can step away from it.
I can just escape.
I don't have to digest
from that
it.
drama. For the family, it's relief in a sense, because that's one less thing.
One less person to have to worry
that
about.
I got to worry about.
Mm-hmm. But look at the price.
You think the loneliness because they're trying not to nobody to find out about what's going on?
Well, this is the kid that's trying to stay away from that, and so they don't want to be involved in the, I hate to use this word, drama with the triangle. We all are aware of the drama triangle, right? The hero, the villain, and the savior. And so they've just kind of exited stage right, and so that by doing so they can find peace. But the price is they're isolated. And the inactivity from isolation in our world and in our society is growing. The inactivity, you see that? Now we're getting some nods, Gary. Go ahead.
It's so much easier to isolate.
Yeah. It's a lot less energy required.
I was thinking about, I meant to bring this up earlier, that whole dyad between the dependent and the enabler. It reminds me in the Old Testament of this couple, Ahab and Jezebel.
Ooh.
Ahab is identified as one of the wicked kings.
Most wicked.
However, if you actually read it, it doesn't talk a whole lot about what he did that was so wicked. What he actually did was, well, what's the nice way to put it? He was sort of a
pushover?
He was sort of a pushover.
Okay.
I was going to use the word pansy.
Well, can we use that word?
And Jezebel was wicked and evil, and well, she used the fact that he was king
to do what she
but
wanted.
she could control him and do whatever she wanted to use his authority to do all that wickedness. But he was considered wicked because it was his authority, and he just
allowed it.
Not even allowed it, but he...
You want to get back to the pansy again, don't you?
God, I mean, he laid in the bed and whined that he couldn't buy a vineyard. So she went out and had the guy killed so he could have his vineyard.
That's true.
It's a crybaby. But imagine if you were a child in the home of Ahab and Jezebel.
Right. How would you act? Would you want to get in the middle of that? What would you be most afraid of? Whose crosshairs would you be most afraid of? Jezebel, right? Ahab's not going to do anything to you. He's going to sit back and see what Mama wants to do. Go ask your mama. Uh-oh, did I say that out loud? Uh-oh, now I'm in trouble. Go ask your mama. May as well go ahead and say it. And so, yeah, I don't want to be in her crosshairs because she's going to do something about it.
And in that dynamic, it would be easy to not be the hero because that's going to get too much attention.
That's going to be able to be seen.
And so this is who I'm going to be.
Right.
I'm going to disappear.
There we go. And that becomes the lost child. Uh-oh. The ink changed colors.
I don't like that green. I can't read it well. The scapegoat. Who's ever heard the phrase scapegoat or the word scapegoat? Okay, they know what.
Okay, good. So we're ready. All right, here we go. We're going to run.
So there's always, in this family dysfunction, there's always somebody who has to get the blame for the dysfunction. And, well, you know, it would make too much sense
I hung my wire.
to blame the dependent or the enabler that allows it, or the two together
Right.
in the dynamic. It's easier to blame somebody else. So
Quicker too.
the scapegoat often gets the focus of the negativity. So they end up, right, they're just sort of, they're just blamed for everything.
That's right. It's their
Like,
fault.
if
It's their
you
fault.
were better, this family wouldn't be, right?
It's your fault.
So this is the kid most inclined to be at risk for suicide. This is a kid who's rebellious and defiant for good reason. Because if I'm getting blamed for everything and it's this family that's dysfunctional, you better believe I'm going to be rebellious and defiant. They value peer groups because they've got no connection in the family. Everybody there is out to get them. They are most inclined for the use of chemicals themselves because of what's in the middle. They're hurt. And so in fact, it's quite possible that the dependent we first talked about used to be the scapegoat in his family.
That's correct. Most of the time, that's the way it happens.
And so it just cycles from one generation to the next. And that's how it's carried in families. The payoff for this individual, this is interesting, is attention. But it's not the positive attention the hero gets, it's the negative attention.
But it's attention.
But at least I'm not the lost child that nobody's paying attention
Exactly.
to.
I'm getting something.
The family benefits from having a scapegoat for the obvious reason. We can blame all of the family's problems on this person.
It's not my
and
fault.
that way, I don't have to take
Yeah.
responsibility for my dependency. You don't have to take responsibility for enabling my dependency.
Right. It's all their fault.
But the price is self-destruction, right? Because this person, right? If you're going to put all this on me, well, then I'm gonna take the family down.
Right. This is we've all heard this, and from the church perspective, we may not like it, but we've heard the phrase "circling the toilet bowl." Right. That's this cycle. That's what this is, and it's all because of pain. It's all because of the hurt. It's all because they are so looking for some relief, and they can't find it in natural, positive affection.
Or there may be a mascot.
This may take some doing here.
So there may be a role that's played where here's somebody who's the life of the party, they develop a humorous personality, hyperactive, they joke a lot, they're an attention seeker. They usually don't do great in school and maybe even have hyperactivity, likely to get an ADHD diagnosis or something like that, likely to develop phobias because what lies deep inside is fear.
Yes, and they're using their clown-like activity to hide that fear and protect it. This is the family clown, the class clown.
Which we can understand because I think, well, I do this, crack a joke when there's a nervousness
Right.
or
Stress.
trying to lighten the mood and things. And so this is what they do to address that fear that's inside. And again, payoff for the individual is attention. And for the family, well, this has the purpose of, or has the product of kind of lightening the mood for the whole family.
Life of the party.
Yeah.
But here the price again is high. What do you see about the price? How can you involve yourself here in the price? Can you read that?
Immaturity and mental illness or emotional illness.
Why is that a hard price to pay? Come on, talk back to us. Why is that? Why is immaturity a hard price to pay? What's it do for their future, for the mascot? Okay, they never reach maturity. What does that do to their future? Okay, say it good and loud. They're going to be taken advantage of. They're going to be. We used to say they can be because there was not the population that we have now. And with the population we have now and everybody being so much closer, they're going to be taken advantage of because their class clown activity, their attention seeking is going to attract the wrong people.
Especially if they take it online.
Ooh, here we go. Hopefully you're seeing why these labels are so pertinent for us in the church to be on the lookout for, to be aware of. Maybe not just in our family, but in the church family, to be able to recognize why these things are pitfalls.
What are they afraid of?
That's a great question.
What might the mascot be afraid of?
So what are they afraid of?
Of being scapegoated? Is that what somebody said?
Yeah.
Can be a part of it, yeah. I got to be different than the other one because I don't want that attention.
Right, I don't want that. The mascot hates negative attention. They know the difference. They don't like it. So that's why fake positive attention is accepted so much because it's not negative, so it must be genuine. And if it's genuine, if it must be genuine, then I can accept it. So what is it they're afraid of? Okay, the truth of the family. I think that's so real. It's in and of itself something that the church has to address because there are so many people that are hiding. So many people that are hiding behind this class clown, or they're hiding behind this facade of defense that the world's not going to care enough to get through it, to get to what's at the bottom of what they need. But we as the church, that's our job. We talked about this last night a little bit, bear ye one another's burdens. So yes, they're afraid of letting that secret out of this dysfunction. They're afraid of their own identity perhaps getting out, and that's a fear, all right? But there's one more in my mind, or well, there's more than one more. What else could there be? Okay, they're afraid of becoming the addict, the one that's dependent upon everything.
What's interesting about that is that some of them are just as afraid of becoming the enabler because they've seen how the enabler has been walked over and trampled underfoot, and what the enabler has given, and they don't want to be used like that.
Mm-hmm. What about their fear of becoming all of the negative things they've seen? I think that's what you were getting at, right? fear of becoming the enabler, fear of becoming any of these roles that are not justified. And so that's why the price here is mental illness, because I can't be myself. I can't open up to my family because they don't care. I can't open up at church because then they'll realize who I am. I can't open up to anyone privately because there's that danger that they're going to tell somebody. So I have to decide what I'm doing, and then that tears at my moral fibers and my fibers of who I am. And we wonder why depression and anxiety and suicide run rampant in these situations.
Wait, are you suggesting? I know the answer to this because I'm suggesting it. We're not just, by the way, we're not just talking about addiction. We're talking about some of the groundwork for understanding mental illness as well. Depression, anxiety, and the systemic or relational nature of those things and how those things come about.
Ooh.
Yeah, there we go.
There's our cycle. I bet you can't read that. But there's our cycle, isn't it? Because the point with this one that we need to really bring out is you can see the different colors, but each role, we don't stay in one role. Because as the family evolves, we change roles. And if we don't break the cycle, everybody else changes roles too. And now we've got a problem, right? Because now we have all different sets of negative things going in new lives as time goes on.
Like the child gets older and starts working, he becomes the
Yes.
What the mother's doing.
Yes.
She's done left, or she's got to the point where she can't do it.
Yes. And they produce a situation within their household that their children have to assume a role.
Some of what you talked about, it's a lot different when you have a single child in a family. For instance, if both parents have addiction, they will have a lot of the same actions as the mascot, just trying to get attention from somebody, because they don't have it at all.
Yeah.
And in a different moment, they'll change roles. And so by moment, they'll circle all of those elements. I see your face as you're looking.
In the situation that I'm talking about, they became addicted to because of that lack.
They get sucked into it. Your turn. It's a great question.
So the answer is yes. Could there be overlap in terms of fulfilling role? And the answer is yes. The answer is that this is oversimplified in order to be able to talk about it, right? It's a little more complex than that, but these are sort of the general ideas. So there can be blends, right? And there's movement from piece to piece.
They're not anchored.
Because the issue because it's not just the individual that's, quote, sick. The family is ill. The dysfunction is in the system, not just any one particular individual.
Exactly.
So what happens when you have like a virus or something in your body, as it impacts and moves through, right? You got a fever, sometimes you got inflammation here, or it's not like it. The bigger picture is sick, but the symptoms show up in different places and in different ways and at different times, which is probably what we really need to get to. So then what that means is the first step in thinking about how you help somebody in an addiction is actually about you, not them.
Not them. That's exactly right. What am I? Which one am I?
What am I to them? What's my relationship? And I can't change somebody else, but I can change me. So I can change the role that I play.
Yes.
And that forces them, if there's going to be a relationship maintained, that forces them to have to do something different.
Exactly. I want to use an image here. A playground. A playground toy, okay? Now you guys are going to tell me what it is. Sometimes it's a hexagon, sometimes it's an octagon. And it balances in the center. What's it called? Say it good and loud. Okay, a merry-go-round, but a merry-go-round is made to go around. It's balanced. What's the thing that's just like the merry-go-round that only balances on the center? Teeter-totter. Don't see them anymore. You know why? Kids get hurt on teeter-totters. Insurance don't like it when kids get hurt. But they're teeter-totters. So what we're talking about then in this relational situation is, can I change my position on the teeter-totter? Can I change my position on the teeter-totter? The answer is yes. But if I change my position on the teeter-totter, I'm going to create an environment in which there has to be change, because if I move, somebody else has to move too. And so then we find a way to create balance.
The real challenge, though, is I need to move, but I don't just need to shift into another role of the dysfunction.
I have to solve it. Now they're giving us looks, Gary, when we said that.
I know, but that's what therapy's for.
That's what therapy is about.
Changing yourself, is that not a form of tough love that we hear so much about, that parents need to have for their children? I know that that's got to be the hardest thing in the world on a parent. I've never been there, but I can only imagine how tough that would be. But allowing it and enabling it, they think, well, I do it because I love my child. I pay him out, I pay this. This child, that has the addiction, they don't get wise. Well, mom and daddy didn't care.
Right.
They told me they loved me, but I don't see that love. They kept enabling me.
Right. That's where the other playground implement comes into play. It's the board that has the balance in the middle, and it goes up and down. What's it called? Seesaw. Yeah. And so we have to balance where we put that piece at between tough love, rules, guidelines, and then that soft, loving embrace, right? And that's moving all the time. It's never the same. And that's the balance of parenting.
So and so one of the things is too is, yeah, I can just cut off from you completely and just go over here and not have anything to do with you anymore.
Right.
And maybe sometimes that's necessary, but that's not exactly what we're talking about, because
Exactly.
that's right. So how can I not play one of those roles, change myself, but still have a relationship with you that just looks different because now it's healthier, that you then are forced to make an adjustment to? Because it's easy to take just the tough love route and cut off,
That creates an isolation. Now, we've already seen that's a negative.
The challenge is, how can I take the tough love route but keep a relationship so that you're more likely to kind of be forced to respond to it.
Exactly.
So,
Uh-oh.
it applies broader. It doesn't just have to be addiction. It's all family dysfunction. And yeah. And so we can have a huge impact on our families by recognizing what we need to do different, because we are not isolated individuals. We
right.
are in relationship to other people. And while I can't control you, I can change me and how I relate to you.
Yes. Hopefully what you've seen now, especially with this slide, yes, it's about addiction, but it's about the way we relate to one another. Are we guilty of the addiction? No. Are we trying to beat people over the head as a family? No. But what we have to realize with addiction and dysfunction is it's not one of those things. As a therapist, Gary will tell you, one of the things that gets my goat and gets me going is somebody bring me a kid and says, here, fix them.
Usually the scapegoat.
It's usually the scapegoat. And here, fix them. Well, the child most of the time will work hard. They will work. They will cry. They will open up. And they will talk. You may have to get in the floor and play Barbies. Can y'all imagine me in the floor playing Barbies? Please don't. But I've done it because they'll open up. And it's not just girls that play Barbies. Boys will do the same thing. And they'll open up. And then when you finish that therapy session, where are you going to send them? Where do they? Say it good?
Right back into it.
Right back into it. Right back into the dysfunction. That's frustrating. That's very frustrating as we think about it.
All right, kids will be back in a minute. What are we talking about tomorrow night?
Baggage.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to talk about what creates this dysfunction. Hope you all come back.